Welcome to the Radiant Astrology Podcast, where we illuminate the wisdom of the cosmos for spiritual insight and soul-level healing. I'm your host, Christina Caudill. Thank you for joining me. Hello, this is Christina Caudill. I'm your host for the Radiant Astrology Podcast. And in this episode, my guest is the astrologer Rebecca Gordon. And Rebecca and I are going to chat a little bit about professional practices in astrology. And we have a very interesting talk. I talked to her about her background because she has a very interesting story that you're going to want to hear. And then we go into how she sees the astrologer's role in working with the client. She also talks about running her school. She has an astrology school that she's been running for 15 years now. And she talks about the role of the astrology teacher, as well as the importance of mentorship. And so we'll get to that in just a moment. I had a couple of announcements, and I also want to talk about what's going on in the skies and what's going on with Radiant Astrology. First of all, at the Pisces full moon, I just launched the Radiant Astrology Members Circle. And as a Radiant Astrology member, you will be helping support the podcast. I know I get a lot of feedback on the podcast. Those of you who are fans, thank you so much for listening. And I have not been posting my podcast consistently. And, that's bad on me because I'm a triple Capricorn and I should be doing better with that. But I have Uranus on the midheaven, so I kind of like to shake things up a little bit. But I love doing the podcast and going deep with a lot of these astrology concepts and how we can use astrology in our daily lives as a tool for healing. So I finally launched my own membership. It's radiantastrologymembership.com. I'll have the link in the show notes. And that way you can help support the podcast. You get extra benefits being a member. So you also get weekly emailed Starcasts. I think if you follow me on Instagram, you can see that I do daily Starcasts. I just do a little snippet just to get you going for the day. I started doing them weekly on Sundays, but I decided that I'm going to make that more of a premium offer, something to thank those who have decided to help support Radiant Astrology and the podcast. So every Sunday, they get the week ahead and the month ahead. You'll also get my monthly Starcast. So if you enjoy the daily Starcast, you can still get them at Radiant Astrology on Facebook and Instagram. But the weeklies and the monthlies are going to be for members only, and you can join for as little as $11 a month, and you get extra podcast content as well. This week, I gave the members the extended interview with Rebecca, where she goes deeper into her journey personally with astrology, how she entered astrology, how she became an astrologer, and how she connected with a world famous astrologer who helped her become professional. So if you're interested in becoming a member of the member circle, oh yes, and the biggest thing that I'm offering to members is you get invited to a monthly new moon intention setting circle that I'm going to be hosting on Zoom around the new moon every month. And this one will be on Saturday, September 28th. And that is the Libra new moon. And so what we'll do is just gather, talk about the new moon, the significance of it. And, the beauty of a new moon is it's not just a moment in time, but it's a seeding moment for that monthly cycle. So we'll also look at the full moon, which carries that seed of the new moon, the seed of intention. And the longer cycles are 6-month cycles as well, when we look for the full moon in that sign, which would be Libra. And so we'll talk about our intentions. And there's something very magical about coming together in a group where everyone is really supporting each other's hopes, wishes, and dreams. And so that will be for those that are at the Destiny level membership, which is $22 a month or above. There's also the annual membership where you get everything that the lower levels get for 12 months, plus you get 1 month free. Because you're paying for the whole year at once. Plus, you get entered into a raffle for an hour reading with me, which is valued at $250. So it's a really great, that's really the best deal, is to get the annual. And I mean, this is something I used to do in the very beginning. I used to run new moon circles, full moon circles, and I loved them. I turned those into my big eclipse circles. So I saved them for the eclipse circles. And right now I am, deciding that I want to do something more ongoing, because even in my eclipse circles, a lot of women, when the eclipse was over, we had to say goodbye to that program, that community. And so in this way, I'm hoping to create an ongoing, continual, sustainable community. Again, that's radiantastrologymembership.com. Let's see. I'm also teaching the Astrology of the Soul course, which is going on now. You can still jump in if you're late. You can catch up. We're just on week 2 on the lunar nodes, which is my week, and I'm teaching my Q&A this Saturday live with the group. I think we've got over like 250 people in this course, which is so energized. It's great when so many people that love evolutionary astrology can come together and share about your explorations. We're looking at natal chart interpretation, and that is really the focus of this. And this is the 4th module from about a year-long course. Yeah, it's been a year now. Wow. We did it. And so if you are interested, now this is not for very beginners. This is, like I said, this is the culmination of a year-long journey. But if you already have the basics and you want to explore deeper, the thread of evolutionary astrology, which is Pluto and the lunar nodes and the rulers of the nodes and squares to the nodes and things like that, this is the module for you. I know when we started this program, a lot of people thought, oh, the basics, they already have it together. They don't need to know the basics. Well, now we are in the part where we are synthesizing all the information. So if you already have the basics and you want to go deeper with the lunar nodes, this is the course for you, because there's really no better people, in my opinion, to learn about the nodes and Pluto from than a group of evolutionary astrologers. And so there's 7 of us astrologers, a part of New Paradigm Astrology. So just go to newparadigmastrology.com and look for module 4 for Astrology of the Soul in the courses, and you can go ahead and sign up and join us before we get too deep in it, because we just started. So catch up with us if that interests you. And as far as what is going on in the skies right now, I like to talk about things that are evergreen, right? So that you can listen to this podcast anytime and get something from it. But then, the sky is always changing, but there are different cycles happening. Every day we have the sun and the moon doing their dance with the other planets, which changes day to day, even hour by hour, with the moon constantly on the move. But then there's the bigger cycles, and we're in the 3rd and final square of Jupiter square Neptune. And wow, the Jupiter-Neptune square that we've been having over the past throughout this year has been at times inspiring, at times confusing, delusional. I think we've also had mass panic about things in the world, and some of it actually real. What's interesting about Neptune in Pisces, we think of it as, we're not seeing clearly, we can be deluded, we can be living in fantasy, but then there's also times where it can help to really get some clarity of what is going on. I tend to think of Neptune as it's both when we can be intoxicated and when we can sober up and start to clear. I think it was my guest Tara All who said this quote that now is so part of what I think of Neptune is, there's no clarity like when the fog lifts. And, there's times where we can feel like we're over panicking about everything in the world. But then there's times where it's like, what, we really do need to consider what is actually happening with, say, for instance, the climate, the Mother Earth, how we're treating it. And maybe it is time that we get a little panicked about it, if that means we can make change. Both Jupiter and Neptune can be about hope. They can be about expansiveness. They can be reaching for the stars, and they both actually it can be too much. The difference really is Jupiter is within Saturn's sort of realm. It is still within it's in this, what's called the social planets, right? We have the personal planets, then the social planets, Jupiter and Saturn, then the outer planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. And so both Jupiter and Neptune, again, are really expansive. Jupiter then can sometimes know like what is too much. It can still go too much. It can still be over the top, sloppy even, and it can lead us astray, but it can also bring us hope for something concrete. It's our ideals. It is religion, it's spirituality, it's philosophy. It's these ideals that we want to really bring into Earth, bring into the realm of reality. Whereas Neptune isn't really concerned about what's actually real, because it is in the realm of all possibility, the entire cosmos, the light and the dark, ultimately where everything is one. And so a square aspect is a challenge. It is, they may be arguing, they may be fighting with one another, wanting to get each other's way, blocking one another's progress, or they can create. They can create something where each one of them is blending and melding and challenged to create something of their merging energies. And they're both in their home signs, Jupiter in Sagittarius and Neptune in Pisces. And so think about these times. I think when we had the Pisces full moon earlier this month in September, it was a lot of this mutable energy. A lot of people were feeling so overwhelmed, and this can be an overwhelming time. And I think having the Jupiter-Neptune square coming up yet again helped to animate all of that. And so now is a time where, if you look back, I think it was late last year, I had the podcast with Louise Eddington, she's having her Jupiter return. And it's interesting because Jupiter's publishing too. And the ninth houses, which is Jupiter's and Sagittarius' natural house. And she's publishing her second book. And at the time when I talked to her, she had just published the first book. So Jupiter's been good for her. But in that talk, we were talking about this very same thing. What would it be like having this Jupiter-Neptune square? And we were thinking of the positives of raising our spirits in the world, but also the negatives of propaganda, people believing anything, seeking something that just helps them to feel like they're able to access something beyond the realm of the real. And that can be dangerous, right? That can really lead us astray, or we can be deluded or delusional, and waste. I think at the dark side of Neptune and Pisces is, we feel like we've wasted ourselves. We've given too much of ourselves away. We've wasted our time. We haven't made the most of our precious time, which is more of a Saturn thing. But with Saturn and Capricorn, hopefully, we can return to a sense of reality and value that sense of grounding, that we don't go too far astray. But in my talk with my guest today, Rebecca Gordon, we do talk about how there can be this beautiful balance with, the Neptune influence, which needs to be dreamy, which needs to go on flights of fantasy. There's nothing you can do when that's happening to you. It's happening. But that Saturn, if we can access our Saturn, we can still be tethered to reality. Some really, really great, what are some great highlights from this talk I had with Rebecca? Like I said, she shares a bit about her personal story. She also talks about the importance of mentorship. She was one of the lucky ones to be mentored twice, actually, in her life. And there's some really interesting synchronicities around that. She started at 14, and now she's like in her late 30s. And astrology has just been guiding her that entire time throughout her life. And she learned to be a professional astrologer from actually one of, these world-renowned astrologers, Susan Miller. I mean, I don't know if it gets any more, if there's any more famous astrologer than Susan Miller. I'm not really sure who that would be, but she worked closely with Susan Miller. And, she takes her work as an astrologer as both a sacred practice, and she talks about inviting in spaciousness and being a clear channel for your clients, which I think is so beautiful and is so necessary, as well as treating your astrology practice like a business, because it does need to be if you're going to make it something that sustains you. I think it's from the Industrial Revolution, we are somehow deluded into thinking that work means going and giving ourselves to something that people will pay money for and you suffer through it. Somehow that gives you some kudos with the universe. And that's what work is supposed to be. But you know what? What about right livelihood? I think a paradigm that's shifting now is, why not have work that is sacred and that sustains you? I mean, there's a lot of ancient practices around that. I mean, look at the Japanese practice of ikigai. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but it's where everything comes together with what you love to do, what you're good at, what the world needs, what people will pay for, all come together. So those of you who are astrologers out there, or want to be, or just astrology fans, just know that there is absolutely nothing wrong if your mastery is in the right place, if your intention is the right place to be a professional astrologer. And that's one of the things I love about Rebecca, is because she has really fused and balanced these two things, the spiritual with the practical, with being a professional and with being a teacher. Now, she is a teacher and a mentor to others in the same way where she was guided by mentors who really cared and who really took their time to help her gain her own mastery. We talk about astrology as a practice of compassion and a practice of healing, which I think is so beautiful. And if you look at, Rebecca Gordon, I mean, she's such a pro, but that's why I love having these conversations, because her heart is really in the right place. You can't just judge somebody by like their sleek marketing, or their resume. It's like, why are they doing this work? And time again, I'm often so just in awe of these astrologers, male and female, but, on Radiant Astrology, I'm partial to supporting females, but these astrologers that are really here to help bring healing to the world. And that's really valuable right now. Let's see. And so in my talk with Rebecca, the most fun part is about halfway we discuss a natal chart, which is something I'm going to start bringing in hopefully for every episode, whether I do it with a guest or whether I do it solo, discussing a natal chart. And so members of my Radiant Astrology member circle get to submit their chart and a question, and we will discuss it. Well, I'll choose one to discuss on the podcast. And what was so interesting and kind of freaky is, but it happens all the time with astrology, is the chart that I chose for Rebecca and I to discuss. I hadn't realized it. I think I have Rebecca's chart somewhere. I hadn't pulled it up. It was last minute. I said, Rebecca, okay, let's look at this chart. Let's answer this gal's question. And the primary signature in this chart, which the question was around, Saturn conjunct the North Node in Virgo. And then we also pointed out it was squaring Neptune, that Rebecca actually has that in her chart too. She was born the same year, 1979, which is also interesting because I rarely get people born in the late 70s or in the 70s in general. I don't know where you 70s people are at, but maybe it's because we're kind of in the same generation. I was born in 75. I get so many people coming from, being born in the 60s, even some in the 50s, and in the 80s now too. I rarely ever get people born in the 70s, people. Come on. I need more of your charts. But anyway, it's the Gen Xers, right? And it was so interesting that the chart I pulled happened to have a very similar signature to Rebecca. And you're going to really want to hear about what we have to say about this chart and these signatures, and also how the outer planets really play into it too. So if you want to learn more about Rebecca Gordon, my illustrious guest, let me give you her little bio before I play her interview. She is based in New York City, and she's a celebrated astrologer. She's a renowned author. Her book, Your Body and the Stars, which I highly recommend. She has been running her astrology school for 15 years now, and so she really knows her stuff. She considers herself a mentor and a teacher and a guide. She's also the resident astrologer at Harper's Bazaar. She does their monthly horoscopes, and she is a regular guest on the Dr. Oz show, where she talks about astrology and health. And she puts on regular retreats, workshops, classes, and courses. She is a speaker at conferences. Now, before I introduce her, about 20 minutes in, we talk about her course that she has coming up. It's her beginner's astrology course, and you'll get all the details in the interview. It begins on October 3rd, so it's coming up. I am an affiliate for her. I totally believe in her work. I know it's worth every penny. And so if you do decide to sign up for her astrology school, I am giving a special bonus gift of a 1-hour astrology reading with me, valued at $250. But in order to get that, you have to use my unique affiliate link, which is bit.ly/radiantastrobonus, and that link will be in the show notes. That way, it's a win-win. You get a bonus 1-hour reading with me, your astrologer, as well as learn from Rebecca for a 12-week online course. 2 of those dates are live in New York City, but if you're not in New York City, you can still attend on live, because she will be doing live streaming those sessions as well. And what's great about a course like this is you cover a lot of ground in just 12 weeks. Like I'd said, I've been teaching a year-long course, for beginners on chart interpretation, which I really believe is important to take the time to learn. A course like Rebecca's is really great to get your feet wet and to have some really close one-on-one attention. So it depends on what you're looking for. New Paradigm Astrology, like I said, we have a couple hundred people in that course, and it's great if that's how you like to learn, if you like community. Rebecca's course is smaller. You get more time with her as a teacher, and she is really there to guide and mentor her students. I think you pair up and you do some work together as a pair. So, it's up to you, but make sure you check out the links. I'll have them again in the show notes if you're interested in learning astrology. Otherwise, I can't wait for you to hear my interview with Rebecca. And like I said, make sure you listen to the end, because we talk about this very interesting chart from my member Jessica. And I just love all the synchronicities. It's just amazing how so much falls into place when you are open to the mystical realms that astrology helps us to access. All right, I hope you enjoy my interview with the astrologer Rebecca Gordon. I'd like to welcome my guest, Rebecca Gordon, from RebeccaGordonAstrology.com to the Radiant Astrology Podcast. Hi, Rebecca. Thank you for joining me.
Hello, Christina. It's really good to be here with you on your show. I love your show.
Oh, thank you. I so appreciate you coming on the show. And I know that I've hosted webinars with you before in the past, and you're so fun to learn from. And I love your teaching style. and you're about to launch another course, which we can talk about in a moment. But first, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? You have a very fascinating story about how you started with astrology.
So, yeah, I grew up here in the city where you can't see many planets and stars, but you can see Jupiter. And I was always obsessed with whatever I could see. From what I can remember, as a kid, I collected astronomy books. I did not know that astrology existed, but I literally thought I would become an astronomer. And I was always just looking at the sky. That was my jam. Like after dinner at night, I would stare at the sky. And it got to a point where I could tell you all of the moons of Jupiter and pretty much anything and everything about the planets that I could get my hands on from an astronomical perspective. So it was years later when I was 14 that I discovered astrology was a thing. And that happened babysitting at my neighbor's house. And I just looked at the mother's books while she was, out for the night. And I saw that word astrology. I was like, oh, okay, I like astronomy. And and this looks kind of like that. Anyway, fast forward a little bit. I basically got up the courage to ask the woman when she got home one night after the babysitting, hey, what's the deal with this astrology thing? I'm sort of obsessed with it. I want to make sure this is real and it works because if it is, I want to know everything about it.
You remember what book it was? Have any clue? Was it like Linda Goodman or something?
Well, yeah, there was two actually that I was reading a lot. One was a Linda Goodman book, of course. And the other one it had some Indian astrology in it. It was a black cover. I think the person's name was James, somebody. I wish I could remember the name. I should ask her. But there were two books, and that one was so accurate. I mean, like everything. And I got to find the name of that book now. You got me thinking, Christina. But I would just read them voraciously as soon as the kids went to bed. So then we had a conversation about it one day. I said, look, this is freaking amazing. After I had thoroughly researched it all, she said, well, yes, I'm an astrologer. And would you like to learn? You can come here once a week. And I know you're already babysitting here once a week, but we'll do another day where you learn astrology with me.
That's amazing. You were 14?
Yes. So she was such an amazing teacher, and she taught me in a way that I felt like really spoke to the way that I learned. And it was just an incredible mentorship. And I guess that brings me to today as well, like why I put so much effort into mentoring students. And I really value the mentorship relationship a lot. And I think it really all started back then because that has given me a foundation that I feel is just like, it's irreplaceable. There's nothing like that kind of transmission. So mentoring is such one of the pillars of what I do today with people.
Wow, that's such a special and actually it's a rare thing. And I love how this woman took you under her wing and took time out of her life to to mentor you like that. That really shows a respect for the craft as well.
I guess looking back, it's pretty amazing. Like I was a high school kid. I had no money. And she really she wanted to teach. And at that point, she was going to all the conferences, all the conferences that you and I go to now. And she was always telling me about them getting back. So I knew there was a whole world of astrology beyond us too. And that was really exciting just to think about.
And at one point, you connected with Susan Miller, too, the world famous astrologer.
So here's the thing. I didn't know astrology could be a career. I thought it was this hobby, this thing we just did for fun all the time. And I just knew I wanted to devote my life to it, but I had no idea you could become an astrologer because there was just no reference point. So anyway, fast forward to Susan Miller. She was really good. She basically asked me, well, Rebecca, what do you want to do with your life? So she was sort of that one person that made me drill down. She asked me so many questions that I hadn't yet asked myself. And she got me to thinking like, hey, this astrology thing that I've been basically living, eating, breathing for the last, 10 years, perhaps I should consider it as a career. So she sort of brought me to that conclusion through a series of questions. And I thought, wow, that was really powerful.
And you ended up mentoring with her or working with her.
She actually lived across the street from me in New York.
I'm telling you, your life is all about synchronicity and serendipity.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really in the moment wherever I am, and I don't plan a lot. It's true, but so we started studying together, of course, weekly. But I also helped Susan because she was getting all this mail every day and basically people writing into her website asking questions about their charts, like 50 of those emails a day. So I was just looking at charts and writing people back answers, and helping them. So she really is the one who sort of pushed me off the cliff and was like, hey, this is a career, actually, this thing you've been doing, you could take it more seriously. And so I did. So she gave me this really hard assignment. Like, she didn't tell me how to write horoscopes at all. She says, here's my horoscopes. Now figure out, it was like old school.
So you had to go
figure out
backwards.
how I did that. Yeah. So I reverse engineered it. Took me a while, but you figure these things out after you sit with it for a while. Anyway, that's how it happened.
What I find so fascinating about your story, I mean, not only do you have all this experience, you've turned it into an actual career and a business. And I know we were talking earlier, and you actually said something that was something that I say a lot of times in astrology, is you have to also work on the business, not just in the business.
Oh, yeah.
Doing the work, but you also have to be looking at the whole organization of your organization.
Exactly.
Maybe it's because we're both earth signs. I don't know. But
well, yeah, I mean, exactly. That's the one thing that I wish I had done 10 years earlier that I didn't, because I was just reading charts 5 days a week all the time for so many years instead of working on the business. And that was great. Like, I love it. I got so much practice with clients, but it was all like when the next client would come in. There was no larger framework or strategy or marketing or anything. But for the newbie astrologers listening, I would recommend, if you don't know what we mean by working on the business, it means spending a day out of the week where you focus on like business development, marketing, focus a day out of the week where you focus on content creation, writing, making videos. And then maybe the other 3 days are about seeing clients or something like that. But it's devoting days or half days to these other areas that are just vital for running a healthy business. And nobody tells you that as a beginning astrologer. I mean, I feel like people now are a lot more savvy, so maybe they're doing that naturally. What do you think?
Maybe. Actually, I think we were talking before that I think a lot of the younger generation astrologers, it's like they start with the marketing first, and they may actually be missing some of the actual mastery when it comes to astrology, the technique of astrology, counseling skills. So you kind of, in some ways, some of them, I'm not speaking for all of them, but some of them seem to put the cart before the horse. Whereas some of the older generation astrologers, there can be some great astrologers, some excellent astrologers that you just never hear about, unless you're
You are so right. Right. They're not even on social media. They don't even have a website, right?
So you really have to strike a balance.
For sure. I mean, we're in this meme world, right, where there's a lot of people talking about astrology. Apparently, it's really popular at the moment. And I don't know, we're at a time where so many people want to become astrologers, and they all tend to be really good at marketing. I could not stress more the importance of what happens in the consulting room and learning consultation skills. Like, you cannot just read a lot of books about astrology and read all these things online and say, okay, I'm going to go give readings, because there is a quality and a tone and a necessary way of communicating that is essential so you don't cause damage to somebody, because they will remember every single thing you say in that reading, right? Like, and I've met so many people that said, oh, 20 years ago, I got this reading and the person said this. Now, many people can be great astrologers, right? Intellectually, they can have a lot of data in their heads. They can know all the cycles, but yet they might not know much about what it means to give a consultation or consulting skills. And that's why whenever I run a class or mentorship, the last portion of the program is about consulting skills. And I took the ESAR consulting skills program like the first year they launched it in 2004 at that conference. And I swear it was a game changer. I don't think my practice would be what it is if I hadn't taken that. So that's why I've incorporated that and all these other things into a consulting skills portion that I teach as well. So yeah, that's just massively important. And that's nothing that is really, it's not in many books either.
Yeah. And it's something that needs practice. And you said you can't just read a bunch of books. I even wish people would read books in astrology to begin with, have a library. I mean, there was a time where I was in all these online groups on astrology. I'm not anymore. It's just such a time waster for me at this point. But not a lot of people have an astrology library. You don't have to read it all, but at least know where to find stuff.
Yeah, I guess you're right on that. Like, we grew up with books and everything, and now there's so much online. But I have to say, the quality of what you get in a good book is not what you get from Googling, Mars and Taurus or something,
Mm.
right? When you have an amazing author, they will break it down in a way that it just gives you a full spectrum of whatever it is. So yeah, I agree. There's such a difference in quality, books versus online, that
Right.
versus having a teacher too.
And having a teacher, it's like you said that, your natal chart is like a roadmap. And I think having a mentor or a teacher is even upgrading that. It's like having, GPS, someone who can take you turn
Oh,
by turn, as you're learning.
and for sure, I think the role of the mentor is to really extract the astrologer from that person, the unique voice that they have as an astrologer in this world. And that's also in their natal chart. If I'm working with somebody who's primarily water, right? Pisces, Cancer, Scorpio, they might be more of an intuitive astrologer, right? Somebody that works with a certain kind of natal chart reading versus, say, a more life coach approach, and I try to cultivate each person's uniqueness in them and the kind of astrologer they are. I feel like there is a place in the world for each person today that wants to become an astrologer, but it's important to know your chart as a roadmap, as your business plan, even for the kind of astrologer you are and how you will run your business as an astrologer, what that actually looks like. And that is different for everybody because, well, first of all, not everybody's a consultant. Not everybody, just because you love astrology, doesn't mean you need to be reading charts. You might be a writer, you might be an astrology researcher, you might be a horoscope columnist, you might be an educator, a teacher. So I always try to open people up to all of the variant things you can do as an astrologer. And then based on your chart and who you are, to take, let's say, a pie, like a pizza pie, and say what percentages of it do you want to be doing, what kinds of things? Like, let's say you want to be seeing clients all the time. Okay. But some people might want to be teaching half the time and clients half the time. And that's sort of in the chart as well, like these kinds of things that you're naturally skilled at as well, even things that are not worth as much energy to. So yeah, as you said, the chart as a guide map, a road map is key in the mentorship process too. And in any student who studies with me, I'm always making sure we always come back to their chart as their guide, because we all are going to be quite different astrologers in the world. And the people that are attracted to you will be attracted to you because of your uniqueness. They will speak your language. So it's important we are true to that. I never encourage my students to all do astrology just like me. I try to elicit out what is their voice, and the way they communicate it is what makes them so special, and to bring that up to the surface.
Great. And so tell me, why would anyone want to study astrology? Like, what is it for them? Because there's a lot of great content out there. There's some, really good horoscope writers now. You write horoscopes for Harper's Bazaar, my favorite magazine. And they always have such great images along with them too. So I love it. But what's in it for the student to actually spend the money, spend the time to study astrology?
That's a good question, because what you learn is your chart, first of all, and not only your chart, but how to read other charts. Studying your chart gives you such a high degree of self-awareness, and it will help you make better decisions in your life, decisions that are actually in alignment with who you are. So not only do you learn to read your own chart, but you learn to read the charts of others. And that will give you a deep sense of compassion. And I say that because I think astrology sometimes is a study of compassion. We can say, oh, that person is this or that. When you look at all of these variant charts, you really see where other people are coming from and what they're working with in the world. And you develop a deeper compassion for humanity as well through studying astrology. And ultimately it's about helping people. And in my beginner's class, you will learn the skills to read birth charts and read the charts of other people as well in your life, your friends, family, or perhaps clients, if you decide to take this professionally. And many people do. And then the third thing is you learn about cycles, how to track your patterns and cycles in your life, because astrology is all about timing. And there are certain cycles in your life which are going to be more prolific for your career path and time to jump on a wave, and other times where it'll be about cultivating a relationship, or times when you're under a Pluto or Uranus transit, when you know that there will be these evolutionary moments, maybe some even chaos and havoc, but to be able to welcome that in and to dance with it and to not fight it, and to know that these are all cycles, patterns. The best part being that everything also always comes to an end, no matter what it was. You learn when it's going to be over. I think that was one of the main points when I was studying astrology in high school. Of course, you're going through these horrible transits and you're just like, when is this going to be over? Whatever it was, I just wanted to know. And to be able to spot it, oh, wow, the transit's done then. I mean, what a wave of relief. And then you kind of also feel like you're not going crazy too, right? When you can see, oh, that was a Uranus on my moon or something. You feel that there's something larger at work. So it gives an awareness, it takes the zoom lens out and makes you see how you're a part of this larger fabric of humanity and space, that not everything is as personal as we may think it is. So it's self-awareness, it's human awareness, compassion, and world awareness cycles. I mean, it's an incredible study in art and science that I feel like translates to many verticals in life too, whether you bring it into your practice as a teacher or as an herbalist or as a therapist. It's not like you have to be an astrologer, but it can work so well alongside many other kinds of careers in the world.
I think it's a great tool for healing, and it partners with so many great healing modalities as well. I mean, I came from a background in life coaching and holistic health coaching, but it wasn't until I really engaged with astrology and took it from a hobby or something that I was going to see an astrologer for, to actually integrate it into my work with clients. And then I just led with the astrology, and I use the other skills as tools in my toolkit. And, there's so many great applications for astrology, but you need to become masterful with your tools, and I think that's what a great teacher can help you to achieve.
Agreed. I love that you said healing too, because I mean, overall, that's what this is. I mean, to me, it's a type of healing work. I mean, I've Chiron on the midheaven, so maybe I'm speaking from personal perspective, but what are we doing as astrologers? We are essentially, that's what we're doing. And we're instigating the process. And sometimes we heal through the art of perspective, through this conversation that can be healing. And that there's different perspectives that we start to see in that conversation. The person walks out with a different worldview and a look on life. That's healing, just that bringing that cosmic perspective in.
And in the beginning of medicine, the doctor would spend time with the patient and they would have a conversation for a couple of hours. And that began the healing process. Something in the mind and the psyche would begin to be the catalyst for the healing. And that was part of the healing. And now you go to the doctor and you maybe have 10 minutes with them and they're looking at the chart and they say, okay, you need this medication or not. And that's where the whole health coaching was born from, that is just people not having that human connection. And so with astrology, it is a practice of humans, for humans, and by humans.
That brings up another thing about the role of the astrologer versus the astrology, because as far as our role as astrologers, I feel it's important to be as clear of a channel as we can. Like, as at least I try to have practices, as we're here as consultants to serve our clients, it's so important that we have our own clearing practices. And that's why taking a lot of time for your body and mind and self-care. For me, it's spending a lot of alone time each day, running, yoga, meditation, aimless walks around the neighborhood. Things like that are essential for me to be able to show up for my clients in the way that I need to. There's this quality of spaciousness that is crucial, I feel, for a reading, and to be able to be fully present with that person. And the quality of what comes through is so different when we create the space and even maintain awareness of the space, the half hour or hour before the reading, just to listen and observe. I can't tell you how many times it's like that sacred hour before the reading. It's always like that precious time, and I'm always listening. I'll hear a conversation on the street and it'll just pop out of my head. Like somebody will say, oh, like moving to the West Coast or whatever. And then that happens to be like this theme in the reading.
Right.
It's shown up throughout the day already. And when you listen, there's something of tuning into that person there too. But I mean, just to value the sacred space enough to sort of set some pillars of the temple there for your own space, at least to consider the reading space something that is unique and to be cherished.
I love hearing you say that about the spaciousness, because I personally think it's really important. We have the sense that our clients, the reason why they are coming to you is part of them, consciously or unconsciously, wants to be seen and wants to be acknowledged. And I think they have every right to have that. And I think part of our duty is to really give them that and be focused. And like you said, be present. I think that's so important. As I said, this is for humans by humans and needs to be passed down from teacher to student. I remember you saying once someone takes one of your classes, you're always there for them.
I mean, I created the school because I felt there was such a need for it, because I wanted to learn myself and study with a group of peers, and I couldn't find that. And I was like, well, I live in New York City and that doesn't exist for astrology? That's crazy. So I thought my first order of business was to create a school. And I did that pretty quickly. And then when the whole online education revolution began, we moved from brick and mortar to online. So, we started in 2005, just putting signs up at the health food stores and things like that, like astrology school opens. And then from there, 5 years later, we slowly moved more and more online. And now I'm live online, so I'm present with you while you're taking my classes. And we do have 2 full days in person too, where people sometimes fly or drive in for the kickoff.
Into New York City?
Yes. But it's also on Zoom too those days. So like if somebody's in, they don't have to fly in, drive in. They can also be there on Zoom with us too and ask questions vocally and written also. But last year we had people fly in from China and all over the country. So it was amazing. Like the kickoff weekend's so much fun, where we all get to do a lot of activities together, and we have a full day together and sometimes a dinner that night too. And same thing at the graduation. So it's a real community, because then the rest of the weeks in the middle, we're online together. And not everybody comes to the in-person ones, but on all the online sessions, it's really nice because everybody's already been together and people ask questions in our chat rooms in between the sessions. I always answer them online too. And then I'm there live with everybody for each lesson and the modules too. Like I'm a Virgo style teacher. So if you've been studying online and reading all these different things and it feels like all these disparate pieces and you just want to you want some organization with it, that's what I do. I make it very easy and organized so you don't feel like you're afraid in a million different places.
I believe it. You are very precise in all your communications and everything. So let's just tell the listeners about the upcoming class. It's Discover Your Birth Chart, the beginner's astrology class. It's a 12-week class beginning October 3rd. And just those of you who are curious about signing up, I'll have the link in the show notes. You must use my unique affiliate link, which is bit.ly/radiantastrobonus. That will actually take you to the website for the Discover Your Birth Chart. And if you sign up, I will throw in a bonus of a 1-hour astrology session with me. It's valued at $250 if you sign up using my affiliate link, bit.ly/radiant astro bonus.
That sounds like an incredible offer, first of all, for everyone to offer a reading with you.
Thank you. Yeah, I totally, and I've done it before where I offered the session, and it was so wonderful because it's really great for a student to see how an astrologer synthesizes it all in a 1-hour reading.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, after teaching all of these years, every year I refine the curriculum a little bit more. So when you begin studying with me in the beginner's class, we start with really understanding how astrology works. We go through it first. The first class is actually the online class. The second class is where we meet in person. The first class, we really learn the whole arc of history of astrology, how it began, where we are now, and your place in the world as astrologers. Because I feel like with anything, you have to know the roots. Whatever it is you're doing, know where it comes from, know the foundations. And then the live class is where we really begin to learn about the planets and signs, houses, which we'll go more into throughout. And then we spend a week focusing on different planets. So we'll dive deep into specific planetary energies, learning how they act differently in the different signs and houses. And then ultimately the aspects, how they speak to each other, all those lines that you see in a chart. The way I teach aspects is so much fun. Like we see it as sort of like characters playing out their roles instead of a lot of lines and numbers. So really animating the chart, making it real, tactile, and in a way that we can give our clients something useful that they'll be able to integrate in their lives, hopefully the next day even, and something that stays with them for years to come. I mean, people will always remember an astrology reading. So I am very big, as I said before, in the consultation part. So in the last couple classes, we focus a lot on the structure of a reading and communication skills, consultation skills, and framing, how to do a sandwich, with the chart, when there's challenging chart aspects, how to ways we can say them and describe them. So we really drill down into the communication, and that's where the students, they practice on each other a bit too. We have some partner sessions too in that, which is so important, I think. So you really do get a full education. It's very complete, comprehensive. You also learn how to work the lunar cycles and timing in this class too. Wow. New moons, full moons, and how to track them throughout the year. And plan your year based on that.
Comprehensive course for 12 weeks. And I bet at the end of the 12 weeks, it feels like it went by so fast,
Yeah, exactly. And they say, wow, that was so much fun. I can't believe I learned so much, because at the beginning, they look at a chart and they're like, what is this? All these lines and numbers. And at the end, I hear my students just reading the soul of this being and interpreting it so beautifully. And I'm just so proud every year when it's the last day. It's truly amazing to see everybody's evolution.
So that's great that within the 12-week class, people are able to have that moment where it clicks and they can synthesize everything. That's beautiful.
And also, I mean, people do get what they put into it. There's some students that do all of the homework and extra credit and they read all of the books, right? They might go a lot further. And so it's really also what you put in. I can't say everybody's doing that, but if people do go through all of the work and everything, they will graduate with a certificate if they do all of that. And there's acknowledgement there. And I do pay a lot of attention to everybody in the class, how they're doing. And if students seem to be fully wanting to take this seriously, I support them in that.
That's great. Okay, so that is the Discover Your Birth Chart Beginner's Astrology class. The link is in the show notes, bit.ly/radiant astro bonus. Check it out. All the details are there. The class starts October 3rd. And so all the information is in the show notes. Before we run out of time, I definitely want to see some of your expertise. I have one of my members from my Radiant Astrology Member Circle, which I just launched. And the membership gets to submit their chart and a question to possibly be read on live on the Radiant Astrology podcast. And so we have Jessica, and we have all the birth data and everything in the show notes along with her chart. And so she asked, what might it look like to achieve some work towards her Virgo North Node with Saturn in the same house? My concerns and issues around Virgo North Node and Saturn is the difficulty to maintain a schedule/routine when I gravitate and feel like I thrive more in chaos. Routines and schedules feel like it limits my freedom. It's a roadblock that I can't seem to get around. I can do routine for 2 weeks tops, then I get rebellious and blow it to shreds. So I think she kind of wants to get to know the nature of, she's got North Node conjunct Saturn in Virgo in the 4th house, and how she can work with it. Let's see. And so you and I discussed this before we're on the call. And, while it's good to look at a certain signature and get some ideas on how that may be playing out in your life, Rebecca and I both agree that, the chart isn't all about the North Node, right? The North Node doesn't have the whole answers for your life, but it is something that can show some growth and evolution. I think that, just the question itself, it seems she's asking about, it's difficult for her to maintain a schedule and routine. Well, Saturn makes things difficult, right? Saturn,
right,
applies pressure to your weak areas so that you can grow stronger. So it does seem to be part of Saturn's job. What do you think, Rebecca?
Exactly. And I mean, it's sort of like that whole WebMD thing, right? That we can self-diagnose and think, oh my God, there's something going on here. Is it this? And maybe it's part of a bigger picture. So yeah, I agree with you completely that we can look at Saturn North Node, but so I want to focus more on her question than the astrology, which is just sort of like, why does she have such a hard time with focus and discipline and routine? And she seems to thrive in chaos. And then it sounds like because of her astrological chart, she feels like she's supposed to be in that discipline routine thing because of her chart. So I guess it's sort of stressing her out. Then, now that she sees the Saturn here, and she's probably read some astrology online and things and feels like that's what I'm supposed to be doing. Am I not living my path because of this? So first of all, like to just open that up a bit more to the fact that we're looking at a very airy chart here, right? There's Sun,
lots of Aquarius,
Moon, Mars, and Mercury all in Aquarius, right? So we're not even talking about the top of the mountain. We're talking about that space that's above the top of the mountain, the infinite potential ahead of the time. And it's in the unmanifest world yet. It's these larger concepts, these big sweeping ideas and concepts, meta, right? And with Pisces on the midheaven too, she's the ruler of her midheaven is Neptune. So there's not much about that sense of organization, structure. I mean, this is air and water. And I don't know about you, Christina, but my feeling is always that we should fully be our charts, commit to who we are, and not try to be somebody we're not. I mean, I can see how this can feel like seeing that Saturn, and if we read some things about the North Node that say, oh, that's what we're supposed to do, it can feel like, are we not doing that? And I would almost say that the focus is, it seems more so about creating this very healing, giving service into the world. With the Pisces midheaven, Neptune in the 6th, there's this pure sense of service and all of these Aquarian concepts, as well as feeding into the service. So I wonder if she is somewhat of a humanitarian kind of person. I wonder if she even really needs to create the structures, if it's even necessary, or somebody else can do that.
Right. I wanted to point out that the Neptune, which rules her midheaven, is in the 6th house. And that's, our habits, that's our work. And it could be that she needs some flow in the day to day. She needs some sacredness. It's that Neptune and Sag. She maybe needs to feel that expansiveness of possibilities of even how, her days may flow. And so this pressure on oneself to stick to a quote unquote routine, which I'm thinking she's getting from, Saturn being in Virgo. I mean, Saturn conjunct the North Node to me always says, learning to take responsibility for your life, for your destiny. But how you do that to me, it doesn't necessarily mean she has to have routines. Virgo has a lot to do with being of service, health and healing, things like that.
For sure. And the ruler of the North Node as well, right? It's Mercury. So I wonder if her idea, her concept, what she wants to impregnate consciousness with, right, is what ultimately creates the structure. It's not about just creating a template for reality. It's not about just creating a structure. It's almost letting her vision guide that, and the structure forms out of that, perhaps.
Yes.
What do you think?
I think so. Totally do. I mean, this is a visionary that we're looking at here with, again,
Absolutely.
Mercury and a tight Mars Sun conjunction in Aquarius, and these straddling the 8th and 9th houses. I feel like you don't want to deny all of that. And these are the personal planets, this is how she engages in the day to day. And,
Right.
with her saying, she blows up things. Maybe that has to do with Uranus is squaring all that. Uranus is squaring the moon. And, that does mean, I almost like to think of, all this Aquarius as sort of the abstract thinking, and maybe sometimes that is hard to translate to other people. But, visionaries aren't always necessarily meant to teach things in, a certain structure of a way.
Right.
I mean, it's really about the message and it's about the idea getting through. Kind of reminds me of, I recently saw the Freddie Mercury movie. And at one point he came in really late for a rehearsal. And the other band members were like, "You're late." Da, da, da. And he was like, "I'm a creative artist, not a Swiss train conductor." Which I thought was wonderful, because, and some people do work better organized like that. But, we know that the creative impulse is about being creative. I see this as a very creative visionary. And just as you said, visionary, I feel like there's also this, creative impulse that maybe needs to blow things up to sort of shatter paradigms in order to then see what the new pattern is,
Right, exactly. And when it comes to implementation, I'm such a believer of partnering and working in teams, working together. So if this person does want to really be the idea person, maybe they decide to either hire or partner with somebody else that will create all the systems for them to teach or do their thing, whatever it is. So, I think charts like this with all of the air could partner well with somebody that has a lot of fire, earth, one of the other elements to balance their energy and to create that ecosystem of balance if they choose to, if there are certain things they wish to manifest and bring out into the world. I mean, I always think that when there's an extreme of one element, it's really good to partner with another person. Or at least hire, work with.
Yeah.
Something, because through that, the structure, I mean, I agree with you that they're not supposed to be structured, but maybe there is some structure around them and they learn something from that structure, but maybe it's through proxy of somebody else, perhaps, that comes in with it at first.
I did want to address that she asked, what might it look like to achieve some work toward Virgo North Node with Saturn in the same house? 4th house, Saturn, it's pretty close to the IC. I mean, so I consider that Saturn and the North Node conjunct. They're 6 degrees apart, but they're in the same sign and house. The fact that Saturn is conjunct the North Node kind of means that you can't really ignore it that much, that it is happening. And, to me, what does it mean to achieve it? Well, Saturn is about achievement. Saturn is about ultimately, as I said, responsibility. And in the 4th house, that's home, family, your roots, and your integrity and your identity, your personal, private identity, who you know yourself to be. And so it's really taking that seriously, I think, even beyond all that you do in the world and all the good that you can do, for others in the world that's beyond the self, which is very much Aquarian is for the good of all. It's like, don't forget who you are. Have some grounding, have a place to really build your sanctuary, I think. And also don't forget about the foundation of your life. What creates the foundation? What gives you some roots? I always like to think that you root to rise, you don't want to be
So if we're going to
totally.
play in the magic, we need the foundations of the building where that's going to happen. Yeah,
Mhm.
for sure. I love what you just said about that. That's great to give the acknowledgement there, but also Saturn squaring Neptune, right? So there is that Saturn North Node square Neptune. They do have to find a way to work together, to find a space between having that structure and having that malleability and looseness, and to let structure dance with play and flexibility. Because if this person tries to be too structured, Neptune conjunct Venus in Sag is going to have its way, and they're going to totally rebel, right, with the Neptune Venus. Adversely, the other way, if they go all the way into Neptune Venus and Sag land, then Saturn suddenly, the rug gets pulled out from underneath, and it's like you have to do your taxes, right? So they can battle out each other unless they find a harmony and give acknowledgement to each other.
Mhm.
Saturn needs to allow Neptune to be alive, and that whole playful, spontaneous space needs to be alive
Space
and
to
well.
dream.
Plus,
Mhm.
yeah, plus
And
Neptune needs to allow Saturn to have a foundation.
Neptune is square the lunar nodes. And so square to the nodes in evolutionary astrology, that's really significant. It really because it can feel at first like it is a block or something, it's taking me away from my path, the Neptune, when in fact it needs to be integrated. So that Neptune, that sacredness, that magic, that manifesting even needs to be integrated into the path. And a lot of times I've seen Neptune square the nodes as a loss of faith, some
Mhm.
real disillusionment at some point in life
Oh, yeah.
that tends to then help that person find their own path. Sometimes I see early on, maybe, the family was either super religious or just had some kind of family belief or something that creates your world. And then there's a disillusionment. I can't tell you how many times I've seen this where the person has
Oh,
escaped
yeah.
from a cult or something like that, or the family's
Well,
like,
I have Neptune squaring the nodes in my own chart too, actually, because we're born in the same year. So I know that aspect.
yeah, and I find that
Um,
there at some point that disillusionment can be a point where a new dream or a new faith has the potential, to fulfill that hole of disillusionment.
exactly. Yeah, the illusion has to completely crumble, and you then start from nothing at some point, and the whole reality dissolves as you know it. So then you begin fresh, and that process is so important. That process becomes who you are. With
Mhm.
Neptune squaring the nodes, it's yeah. But
I
also
wonder if
then,
and now it makes sense to me because you were talking so much of your life sounded like filled with synchronicities and serendipities. And
mhm.
I think that might be some Neptune there.
It was very Neptunian, and then there were moments where I got extremely Saturnian because my Neptune is square Saturn as well, so I can relate to you, Jessica. Um, there were moments when I said, oh, "Let me just get a business suit and pull it all together and figure out why I'm so all over the place." Let me just try it out and be a manager or something. Which never worked. So eventually, I definitely started to let both dance together, let the Saturn live with the Neptune. I mean, here I am, I'm an astrologer, right? And there's a lot of synchronicity every day in life as an astrologer. And let that breathe as well. I've created extreme structures too, where all of that can play. Like I have a team, I run a business. There are elements that are extremely Saturnian about my life here that enable the Neptune to actually have that spaciousness to vision and to play and as well, so they're co-present, I could say. But it's been a long time working on that square, and still I still can vacillate in days. I can all go into Neptune or Saturn. I recognize that when it happens. And it's just about really balancing both, throwing them in the soup together, heating it up, and letting them.
They say that any square is creative. And I think this is the ultimate need to create, with Saturn being building and structures and manifestation, and Neptune being, dissolving and the dream and all that. So, but it's beautiful when they can manage to get them to play together and create, which totally, to me, speaks to your life too. I didn't know. I hadn't looked at your chart. Rebecca, when I picked this chart, I just said, Jessica.
Well, it's funny. It's ironic because I teach people how to create a business out of astrology, out of something very Neptunian. I teach them how to do something Saturnian out of it. Because I've learned a lot about business in the last 15 years. I've made tons of expensive mistakes. I've been early adapters in online education and so many things. I actually really love it. But I thought, this is great. I've learned so much. I might as well share it. And so I ended up teaching so much of what I've done on my own. But yeah, it's definitely Neptune, Saturn, and the nodes squaring as well. My North Node is conjunct Saturn also. So we have a lot in common, Jessica.
You were born in 1979 also?
I was, yeah.
Okay. That is so crazy.
September 1979. Yeah, the year where I was born in the eclipse of September.
Wow.
The solar, lunar, in between those.
Well, Jessica, I hope you're listening, and I hope you are following Rebecca Gordon now, because there's certain things you can learn from her. And I should also mention that Rebecca teaches a entrepreneurship
astrology for entrepreneurs.
Astrology for
But it also is like entrepreneurship for astrologers too. It's actually both.
And
it's actually both
in the spring, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Okay.
And that's a great class because we always have a mix of astrologers and non-astrologers in that class. And but I love teaching that so much. It's basically teaching you as an astrologer or a non-astrologer how you can use your chart as your business plan and as your roadmap. And we work with all the cycles in work and business as well. Your role, how you could best bring help in based on your chart, all of that good stuff. But yeah, Jessica, we want to get to know you more. This is so interesting that we're looking at
fun?
This. Yeah.
This is the first time I've done this on this podcast, and hopefully it's going to be a regular thing. So I really appreciate you playing, and I'm super excited about your course coming up. Again, it's Discover Your Birth Chart for a beginner's astrology class beginning October 3rd. Anything else you want to say before we wrap up? This has been so much fun.
Well, I love talking with you here, Christina. And for anybody that's listening, if you're thinking about studying astrology, I would just recommend you to keep on learning and get in touch with us, Christina or I. If we can't help you, we can guide you as well. But it's just such a beautiful path. And every day as an astrologer you just open up a different swath of the sky. It is so interesting. Like there's never a boring day. So I would just encourage anybody who's thinking about the path and be happy to chat about it more as well. But just to encourage you to keep going. Reach out if you have questions. Christina, it's been so lovely to chat with you here. Thanks for having me on your show.
And you too. You're always so generous with all of your wisdom. And you're just so rich with wisdom and insight that I'm so honored to know you and consider you a friend. And thank you again for coming on the Radiant Astrology Podcast. I hope to see you again soon.
Thank you, Christina. Looking forward to it.
Bye-bye.
Bye.